Oh yeah, I covered this point. And remember, this is, when you're wondering why is blockchain the key to self-sovereign identity, you've noticed in everything I've said tonight, I haven't mentioned cryptocurrency at all. There's nothing about the use of blockchain for what we're talking about self-sovereign identity that involves cryptocurrency. However, it's highly complementary to cryptocurrency. Many times when you want to exchange cryptocurrency, you actually want to be able to prove your identity, or at least prove that you're trusted. So these two things are complementary, but there's nothing about self-sovereign identity that requires or builds on having to have a cryptocurrency. Okay, so a little bit about these DIDs, these decentralized identifiers. And I know I'm talking about something here that seems like, oh, you know, it could be a pretty technical topic. It is a little bit technical topic, but I want to personalize it. How many folks recognize that identifier? I'm curious if there's anyone in the room that recognizes that. It's good. I love this international test. If we were in the US, 99% of the folks would pop their hands up. That's a social security number in the US. That is the identifier you're issued when you are born and registered with the US government. It's not mine. In fact, I happen to, I use this particular one because there's a Wikipedia page about it. This one's been used by 40,000 people. How did that happen? Back in the 1930s, a company called Woolrich in the US, the CEO, they wanted to sell a new wallet. And it had one of these windows in it, so you could, you know, put a credential in there and you wouldn't have to take it out. And it was a new idea at that time. So the CEO of the company said, what are we going to put in there? Let's put a social security card, the card that you get that has that number on it. And, but let's not put a real one. So he asked his secretary to just create a little miniature social security card, and she used her social security number. Printed it on that card, and they sold it with the wallet. A whole bunch of people bought the wallet, looked inside and said, oh, I have a social security number. And they just started using it. The point being, how do you prove in the United States that that's your social security number? You get a little card, which is so easy to just, I mean, any laser printer could produce a version of that card, right? There's no protection behind that at all. As a result, about 8 months ago, when we were talking to the US government, we were holding a workshop for federal government agencies in the United States, and the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, collect taxes in the US, had been doing their homework, and they were really interested in blockchain. And they came, and we showed them this, and we said, okay, if we could replace that number as a way to identify yourself with the US government with a longer number, not one that you're probably going to write down, but one that you could use to sign your tax return, they could save $20 billion a year in hacking of US federal tax returns. They believe 90% of that is actually going over to Russia. So we wouldn't have to finance them to interfere with our elections. So why is this number something that the IRS would be so interested in? What's different about it than a social security number? It's because as a DID, it's the address of a public key on a blockchain. This particular one is the address on the sovereign blockchain. But if you put BTCR there, it's on the Bitcoin blockchain, or ETH, it's on the Ethernet blockchain. It's an open standard that can be used with any modern public blockchain. And it's the address of the public key, and you hold the private key wherever you want your digital wallet. In fact, all your digital wallets will have the private key. Now, you can look at those numbers and know right away. You're not going to memorize any of those, okay? Which might seem like a problem until I turn around and ask you, how many phone numbers in your address book do you remember these days? I mean, who in this room thinks they remember more than 10% of the phone numbers in their address book, right? If someone asked me for the phone number of a friend, I don't have a clue, right? We all have to get out our phones and look it up. We already don't even track phone numbers. This is just a little bit longer number, but this Easy for these things, okay? So fundamentally what a DID is, it's a new standard, open standard for how you have the address of a public key for which you keep the private key, which means that if I tell you this is a DID, I can prove it to you. I can cryptographically sign it with a private key, a message to you, or a message you send me. And you know it's me as the control of that private key, okay? That's the basic idea of DIDs. Now, here's the thing. You won't have just one. It's not like that social security number or government identifier where you're only supposed to have one, right? Entirely different. You will actually have thousands of them. And the reason is you will have one for every relationship you set up. There's no need, with a phone number, it's only practical for me to have one. I share that phone number out there. Everyone has a copy of it. Do you know what identifier you are tracked the most with in modern digital life today? It's not your government ID, not even close. It's your cell phone number. You notice how many more websites are asking you to share your cell phone number than your email address? This is the one true identifier they're using to track you today. Sometimes they need it, but many times they don't. It's just the fastest way to access databases out there of your information. So with DIDs, your wallet, your digital wallet on your phone, on your tablet, any place else will generate a new one every time you create a new relationship, a new connection. Okay? You don't have to think about it. It's just like an address book that's automatically filling up. So that, we call this privacy by design, done at a global scale. It's building in the ability for you not to be tracked unless you want to be, unless you say, yes, I am the same person that's in that other database over there. Okay, so that's one thing about DIDs. The other one, which is really important, remember that connection that the two peers formed? Every time I hand you as another individual or a business or a thing like my connected car, a DID, they hand me one too. We call them pairwise pseudonymous identifiers. Now the other thing that DID is associated with is what we call an agent, an endpoint to communicate. What that means is every time we share DIDs, we are creating a private encrypted channel between those two parties, two people, person, organization, person, thing. I can't emphasize this enough. There has never been a connection like that in history. There is no intermediate service provider in there. There's no telephone company, no internet service provider, no social network. It's direct peer-to-peer between the two of you. And those DIDs will last forever. You have your own private channel to use for as long as you live. And in fact, as long as needed to, even for your digital estate. So again, there's never been an identifier like this. This is why the W3C has said, oh, we have to standardize on this. This is the first identifier beyond the URL that is important enough to the future of the internet that we're going to get 400 companies together to agree on that standard. And we think it's largely done, so it's mostly just a bunch of politics. Once more, I want to emphasize, DIDs are not specific to Sovereign or Bitcoin or Ethereum. They can work on any blockchain, public or private, from now and for many years forward. It's very simple, but as an identifier, it's globally unique, doesn't require any centralized authority, and it's cryptographically verifiable. Those are the three properties that we've never had before.